Today on Locked On Rockies, the home run conundrum.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock On Rockies fans, welcome into... Oh, I think I jumped the gun. So let me go again. Rock On Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 6th day of July in the year 2022. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Who am I? Well, I am just the guy that's been bringing you your daily Rockies talk for a little over some year and change now, and been following this team my entire life. You can see more of what I do at paulfholden.com, and you can follow me at paulholden33. Today on Locked On Rockies, we are talking about home runs, and as Johnny says in the chat, Johnny Balls says in the chat, Chris Bryant hit a home run. Thank the baseball gods. We got to talk about home runs. We got to talk about how they are an issue for this team on both on the offensive side and on the defensive side of the game, and how much this team needs to get better at hitting home runs. And some people that have listened to the show and listened throughout the offseason might be like, but Paul, you said your focus is on hitting doubles. Your focus is on hitting for averages. Your focus is on this. And I would say you are absolutely correct. But it is a problem. It is an absolute problem that out of the 77 home runs that the Rockies have hit this year, 33 of them have come from two players, CJ Cron and Charlie Blackmon. The Rockies not having multiple people in double digits in home runs is a big reason why this team has not scored runs in crucial situations. There is no more clutch hit than the home run. And this is something the Rockies, and this has been going on for a while, the Rockies need to hit the ball out of the yard more. Why are teams so successful against them? Look exactly at last night's game for why. It's teams that can hit home runs have such a nice bonus X factor to their offense, it changes the game. Herman Marquez, the traffic, it's immediately a problem when there's traffic on when you have home run threats. And that's exactly what happened to the Rockies in yesterday's game against the Dodgers. And this whole time, it's felt like the game's out of hand, but the momentum really starts to shift. And you saw it in the ninth in the game one. A home run, even if it's a solo shot, means that someone is seeing the batters, seeing the hitter, or they're seeing the pitches from the pitcher well. They're locked in. That inspires you and then gets you in a better position, and it can lead to a potential rally there, as we saw in the ninth. It's also guaranteed runs scored. It's also a way for your team. There's no lobs there. We know how you can completely clear the bases. Hit a home run. That's how you drive in more runs. Let's look at the teams that lead the league in home runs, and let's compare them to where they're at in terms of standing. Let's look at the top five. It's the Yankees at 133, the Braves at 124, the Astros at 118, the Brewers at 115, and the Blue Jays at 106. What do all five of those teams have in common? Playoffs, in the hunt, in a position to be successful. And how have the Yankees done most of their damage this year? It's come off the fact that two of their players are in 20 home run territory. It's the fact that they launch balls and take advantage of their ballpark. The neglect of analytics, the neglect of focus, and the neglect of coaching is really hampering the Rockies. We're starting to see part of my issues that I think with the offensive woes comes from the fact that we haven't seen much from this coaching staff. And under Bud Black's tenure, the Rockies haven't necessarily been an offensive juggernaut. This team needs, and part of why this team doesn't have as many resources as other teams is because they don't buy in into analytics as much as they should. How many times have we had this conversation? This is another prime example. The team's inability to hit home runs is another prime example of neglecting analytics and neglecting the 21st century of baseball. Just because you're at altitude doesn't mean your offense is going to come. The Coors Field narrative is so tiring, and I'm a victim of I'm talking about it too. I follow the team. Of course, you have to talk about Coors Field, but it doesn't matter when teams are coming in and using it against you. When teams are coming in and hitting the ball out of the yard, and when it's not translating to outside of Coors Field, your offensive success, and that starts with your power hitting. Well, not starts. A huge part of it is your power hitting. How can the Rockies get a better understanding of the impact of home runs and the impact of offense? Well, they can buy more into the numbers. They can buy more into a different mindset and change their outlook. Instead, the Rockies have continued to be mediocre. It's there's so much more that the Rockies can do, and I just it's they have the resources, they have influence, they have this unique situation, they've gotten success before. I don't know why they can't tap back in to what's worked before. It's just missing on the right players. What is working for CJ Cron that isn't working for everyone else? What is working for Charlie Blackmon that's not working for everyone else? The Colorado Rockies shouldn't go like this. A 20 home run candidate in CJ Cron, 13 from Blackmon. Then Grichuk is next with 8, and Grichuk and Rogers are tied at 8. McMahon at 7, and then to double tie for 5, 3 home runs, 2. Where are the double digits? How big of a deal would it be for the Rockies if Connor Joe had 10 home runs? How big of a deal would it be for the Rockies if Ryan McMahon had 10 home runs? And this was the big thing I was worried about at the beginning of the season. We put too much into Elias Diaz. Elias Diaz had a good stretch. He had a surprising stretch, but you can't overvalue that, especially if we're quantifying just home runs. Brian Serven has 2 less home runs than Elias Diaz and 35 less games. Catchers are supposed to hit for power. That's what they do. They're supposed to bat .220 with 20 home runs. And Diaz isn't going to do that. This team needs Chris Bryant to be hitting more home runs. I know the injuries and everything, but even before, Chris Bryant needs to be in double digits. The Rockies need to be a top team in baseball. Where do they rank right now in terms of home runs? Well, that's 20th. That is the bottom half of baseball, folks, and a tie with the Red Sox at 77. The only teams below them, the Rays, the Reds, the Padres, the Royals, the Nationals, the White Sox, the Guardians, the Athletics, and the Tigers. When you look at those teams that are below the Rockies, when you look at the company that they're keeping right there, those are it's not good. Teams that have hit more home runs than the Colorado Rockies this year: the Chicago Cubs, the Baltimore Orioles, the Miami Marlins, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Minnesota Twins. And you want to check in on your division, all of your division opponents, except for the exception of the Padres, which is, I honestly can't believe, at 68. That's weird too, and that's going to be an issue for them as well. But every single team in the division, other than one, is higher than you in home runs by nearly 20, little under 20. And that's huge. That's massive. That again, that shows you the difference in the composition of teams. The Giants are struggling, but yet they're still able to generate offense from the home run. Arizona continues to get production out of home runs. How many times have the Rockies gotten sunk because they have given up a big home run? How did the Dodgers score yesterday? I believe it was 1 or 2 runs in yesterday's game came from base hits. The long ball is important. You can't just focus on it. In my original argument and talking over the offseason, you have to do both. You need to develop a lineup that's going to take advantage of and do and hit for average and hit in the alleyways and be someone that can go in different stadiums and hit well. But you also need to be a team that goes out of the yard. And the Rockies haven't been a team that has done that at all in terms of home runs in the 2021 regular season. Let's just keep going back here for the recent history of the Rockies. 182 home runs, 21st in all of baseball in 2021. In the pandemic shortened season, the Rockies were 22nd with 63 home runs going back to 29, and that's what this is a worrisome trend. 15th. The Rockies haven't been in the top 15. They haven't been above 20th in baseball in home runs since 2019. Going back to 2018. Let's go back to that. Look at the major difference here, though. Look at the major difference with how did 2017 and 2018 end for the Rockies? Playoffs. Interestingly enough, in 2017, the team was actually still 20th there. But in 2018, the Rockies finished 8th in baseball in home runs. And I mean, that was arguably one of the best seasons we've seen for the Rockies in a long time. I know the team's different now, but you can see by going back into those years how important it is to utilize the home run. And it's not just on offense that the Rockies have been struggling with this. Let's take a look at the how many home runs the Rockies have given up, especially Herman Marquez. But before we do that, got to tell you about some of the people that make this show possible, and that includes BlueNile.com. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as your favorite person with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Well, I know I would be in that situation. Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 on the phone or on the chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with the jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Rockies listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. In the live chat here, Joel says, it's crazy having Crone, Grichuk, and Chuck in our lineup at Coors Field and be ranked 20th in home runs. I honestly thought our offense would balance things this year. Our pitching give up 4 home runs, but we get 8 in return. It seemed to make sense with Bryant, Grichuk, Crone, and Chuck. Yeah, that's what the plan is, and those names should be home run contenders. Obviously, we haven't gotten Bryant in the mix for a while, and maybe that last night's home run is a sign of things to come, because Bryant has been able to put the ball in play and was able to finally get one over the wall, and that was not a cheapo home run either. That ball was hit deep. That ball was hit hard. It did just get over the wall, but it was at the deepest part of the ballpark. It is something that you wish the Rockies would balance it out, but they're not getting any help when the Rockies are giving up a lot of home runs. They are 15th in baseball in a 3-way tie with the Pirates and the Orioles, and not too far off from being within the top 5. Honestly, less than 10 home runs would separates the Rockies from giving up being in the top 5 in home runs allowed, and that's headlined by Herman Marquez, who simply has just not been able to miss bats in massive situations. In his all-star year last year, Herman Marquez gave up 21 home runs. That was in 32 games played last year, and 32 games started for Herman Marquez. This year, Herman Marquez has given up 17 home runs in 16 games. Herman Marquez is averaging more than a home run given up per game, and that is unacceptable, especially from your what should be your ace. whatever issues that have happened with the pitching staff, it needs to be immediately addressed this offseason. If it's the new pitching coach, if it's whatever changes they did in the offseason, whatever they did for Senza, for Freeland, for anybody, whatever changing of pitches, changing of mechanics, changing of how things got done, they need to stop. It needs to end because every Rockies pitcher not named Chad Kuhl has regressed this year. Kyle Freeland has had some product of bad luck, but that doesn't mimic the fact that he himself also gives up a bunch of home runs. He can't avoid giving up the big long ball either. Austin Gomber hasn't been able to avoid giving up the long ball. If you're looking at comparing to last year, Kyle Freeland is already on halfway to the amount of, he's kind of right on pace with where he was last year in a 20 home run season. Not the worst thing, but again, not ideal with where he plays and it seems to give up the home runs in the crucial situation. It can't be, the pitching staff needs to be much, much, much better, much more efficient, especially when it comes to the long ball. Let's dive in over here to Danielle Allentuck's piece here. Colorado Rockies at the halfway point, the limited good, the bad, and the ugly here on the Gazette. This is from Danielle Allentuck here. We're going to kind of glance at, we will focus on the good. I do want to go back to the good, and we do have to highlight the Rockies that are being successful when it comes to hitting home runs and the impact of that. But let's dive in over here. The bad. Starting pitching was supposed to be the hallmark of this team. Again, that has not been the case. The team returned 4 of their starters from last year, Herman Marquez, Antonio Senzatella, Kyle Freeland, Austin Gomber, but all have struggled at times. The only steady pitcher has been Kuhl, who signed with the team at a relative bargain of $3 million. Overall, the group has not performed, though, with a 5.15 ERA, the third highest in Major League Baseball. If the season were to end today, Marquez and Gomber would finish with the highest ERA of their careers, while Freeland and Senzatella would have the second worst of their time in the majors. The defense behind them, which only lost Trevor Story, has been much better. It made strides lately thanks to a team meeting that led to more pregame work, but increased. The defense isn't really as bad as the defense has been. It doesn't make up for the fact that the Rockies are third in Major League Baseball in ERA. Highlighted by the fact that they give up a ton of home runs. And when you look at earned runs here for Rockies pitching, they are third, 396. I mean, obviously, if they're there with that earned run average, of course they're going to be up there as well. The Rockies ERA is the third worst in baseball, so no surprise that they've given up the third and most amount of runs in Major League Baseball, and they are 4 runs away from being only the third team this year to give up 400 runs. The other 2 teams, the Nationals and the Reds. That's the company you keep. That when that is the performance you have gotten from your pitching staff, especially mimicked by the fact that you're not doing damage on the other side with home runs, it shows you. It shows you how big of a deal the long ball is and driving in runs. It's simply something that's kept the Giants afloat. The reason the Giants have not allowed, or they've only allowed 65 home runs this year, while even through their struggles, they've still been able to maintain a record over 500. They still are in a position where they might slip under 500 for the first time today, this tough stretch. But don't you feel much more confident in the Giants' abilities to get things done than the Rockies? I mean, they seem more competent at the dish than the Rockies do. Chris Bryant's impact is going to be the true deciding factor if the Rockies are going to start turning things around in terms of hitting more home runs. Got a question from the live chat here. Do you think the franchise really wants to win a championship? And I will answer this. With, of course they do. That's what they want. But they see the path differently. They have what in their eyes and what their crew has told them will lead to a championship, and it hasn't. There have been multiple mistakes, multiple missteps, and some stuff that has happened behind the scenes with some relationships that we don't know that has sabotaged this team, which was closest to which had worked its way to being the closest it's ever been to championship caliber team just a few seasons ago. At this point, the team really believed in this starting pitching rotation, and they thought adding the all-star of Chris Bryant and some of the pieces that they had was going to be enough to get them in a position to make a run and get into at least that wild card spot. It's failed. And it's failed before. It's failed with other teams, but it's failed in the form of falling apart in the playoffs. It's failed with only making the wild card game and coming one game short of the Dodgers for the division instead of 10 games below 500, way deep in the cellar of the NL West, and are an afterthought already by July 6th. The team doesn't want to make the changes that others would recommend to get on that path towards a championship. They don't want to identify and embrace the rebuild model. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're a top 10 team in attendance and can spend more money than they actually give off and could bring way more into this club. If you can pay Chris Bryant that contract while you're paying the Nolan contract and all this other stuff, while your team continues to be a top leading team in attendance, the Rockies can spend more money. That excuse it can't be there either. The Rockies, if they want to invest in this team, they clearly have more of the resources to do so. They won't act like they do, but it's a bunch of baloney. You can't offer this Chris Bryant contract out of nowhere. After offering the contract that you offered to Nolan, offering all of these extensions that you've offered to all of these players, there is clearly money there, and there's clearly more of an idea of spending some money because they actually made moves in free agency. So, does the franchise really want to win a championship? Yes, but it's clear the vision of the front office and the people at the top got clouded in the best opportunity that they had, and now the Rockies are not in a position or coming anywhere close to be in a position of a championship. Diving into more of the live chat and to Danielle Allentuck's piece there on from the Gazette, the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Rockies. But putting a bow on our home run conversation, all in all, one example again of how the Rockies have struggled and why they've come up short in big situations. The offense hasn't been able to produce home runs when they've needed to and put the ball out of the yard, other than two players, Charlie Blackmon and CJ Cron. And on the other side, the Rockies have been unable to avoid the big situation, being a team that gives up a lot of home runs and as a result gives up a ton of runs in response. So the home run problem is simple. They need to hit more home runs while limiting the others. And it's kind of pretty simple. I know that's not groundbreaking analysis, but when you look at the teams that hit a lot of home runs and you look at where they're standing in terms of the offensive production and record, it's no surprise that hitting more home runs is a good impact for your team, also while limiting home runs. My example with the Giants wasn't that great. I feel it kind of got a little rambly today. But we'll dive more into the live chat here and, like I said, into Danielle Allentuck's piece there as well, because we got to talk a little bit about some good stuff and we got to talk about the ugly stuff as well. But before we do that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. That's BetOnline.net. Joel in the live chat says, The ownership's unwillingness to admit we need to rebuild is probably going to keep us from making a real run anytime soon. Yeah, I mean, the Rockies the past 2 seasons could have embraced a different mindset and could have beefed up a farm system that is already surprising. Which, by the way, we will be talking farm system with Locked On MLB prospects here on tomorrow's show and maybe even into Friday's show. I think I'm also going to be recording that live on the YouTube channel tonight. So if you've subscribed to Locked On Rockies, you might be able to get the inside scoop on our breakdown of the Rockies at the trade deadline and the farm system. There was also a great piece just put out by Just Baseball today doing a huge deep dive into the Rockies prospect system if you want to go check out some of that stuff. But though the future does have some exciting pieces, and the Rockies could have built around that and still have a great opportunity to do so. If the Rockies sell at the deadline, then we'll see a shift from the front office. We'll see a shift from the culture. We'll see a team that's gearing up for a run in 2 years instead. They don't need to do the long rebuild. They just need to make sure that they can beef up and get things ready to go for a team making a run in a little bit in a couple more years, headlined by Veen coming up, Tovar, Montero, and use this time, use the effectiveness, use your Daniel Bards, your Colomés, your Jose Iglesiases, and honestly, your CJ Crones, and build up your rotation, build up your staff, build up your younger arms, build up your bullpen. Those four contracts you could turn around, and I'm sure you could get yourself a nice haul. Get involved with the Marlins and go get some of those freaking pitchers. But we'll talk more about that stuff there. But just to answer your other questions, it just seems like you said, I just wonder why the Rockies don't spend a ton of money on pitching. Is it because it's hard to pitch there? Yes, that is one thing. It's not, you can't just throw money at the problem. And the Rockies have certainly have had pitchers that have been successful. It's just a matter of maintaining it, and just it's the lack of really diving into analytics and the next step of baseball. This is a team that does not focus and dive into that part of the game. They do some form of analytics. They do some sort of this and that. They are undermining themselves, and they're undermining what the potential of these team and their players are, because they aren't putting in enough of the effort on the analytics side and the research side into figuring out what is the most effective way to pitch here. What worked for Ubaldo Jimenez? What worked for Jeff Francis? What worked for Herman Marquez before this year? What worked for what worked for Jorge De La Rosa? What worked for these pitchers? Dive into the numbers and the stats of what was working for them, and process it in there. Why were you so enticed by Austin Gomber, and why did he just sneakily end up into the bullpen a couple of weeks ago? You ask what was wrong with Nolan. He was pissed off because the team didn't embrace, it wasn't doing enough. He was pissed off that the team wasn't doing more. And we're seeing it again in our home run conversation. All of the Rockies' shortcomings at least has a trail back to this team not embracing analytics and not being a team that dives deeper into the numbers of the game and figures out how they can get better and get more out of the players that they have. There is something that has changed with this pitching staff this offseason, to the point where they have, like we mentioned here, again, Danielle Allentuck from the Gazette saying that two pitchers, Gomber and Marquez, would finish, if the season finished right now, their career worst ERAs, and then Senzatella and Freeland would have the second worst of their career. That's not good, folks. It's just not good at all. It was, and so it's so. And to basically, at the end of the day, but it's they chose the ego and the mindset of the GM over a franchise player, and now you see the ripple effects of not having Nolan Arenado on your team anymore, and what Nolan Arenado can bring to your club. Let's go back into the Gazette here and Danielle's piece, and I do want to dive into the ugly, because she dives in more to the home run problem here. Remember all the two moves the Rockies made trying to bring in more power? They haven't made a dent in their power production. The Rockies have just 77 home runs, despite playing half of their games at altitude. Only 21 of those have come on the road, contributing to their 12-25 record away from Coors. 43% of those home runs have come from Crone and Charlie Blackmon. Chris Bryant, who's making $182 million over the next 7 seasons, just hit his first one on Tuesday. Randall Grichuk, one of those two acquired to add a boost, has only 8. McMahon and Brendan Rodgers have less than 10. That was something we didn't expect, Black said. We thought we had more. Classic. Not having enough power is just the start. The Rockies have also been unable to drive in runs on the road, hitting .203 with runners in scoring position, 63 for 309. Woof. There's no reason for this team not to be a seller at the deadline. There really is no reason for this team to... I try to be optimistic with you all. I try to bring some form of positivity when I can. I'm also very critical of this team. Maybe you make a good, nice long run for that wild card, but that you're not. The odds of that happening this year, and then to make a run with the depth of this team into the playoffs with some of these teams, how they're constructed, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. So get something back, make moves, make your team better, and then just admit that you're not good right now. Because guess what? You're still going to be a top 10 team in attendance every time, whether or not you hit home runs or not. A little ranty today, I feel like, on the show. But that's going to wrap things up for today. Rockies trying to avoid the sweep tonight as they got the last game against the Dodgers in this set. 35-46 Colorado Rockies taking on the 51-29 LA Dodgers. And with Marquez up, that's who do we got on the bump here tonight? Because isn't there a nice little mix up there? That ain't right. What is that? Oh, actually, wait, no, it is Jose Urena is getting the bump for the Rockies tonight. Getting the start here. I'm not seeing any starts. I believe he was. But anyway, Rockies are getting a new arm up and moving for them here in the starting point. We'll see how that goes for the Rockies tonight. But folks, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now that you've made us your first listen of the day, why don't you check out Locked On MLB Prospects and get the latest on everything going on in the world of prospects. And you can also stay up to date with your other Colorado sports with the Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Broncos, and Locked On Nuggets podcasts, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Hey, your subscription to Locked On Rockies on YouTube is a massive help. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, then you'll know when we go live and you can pop into the live chat, just like we had so many today. Butta, Joel, we had Johnny in there today as well. So if you want to join the live chat and hang out with us during their show, well, do that right there. But folks, until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.